In the year 1800, the British Empire was on the brink of a transformation that would change the world forever. Though already powerful, it was just beginning its rise to become the largest empire in history. From remote islands to bustling ports, Britannia's reach was expanding rapidly. But what exactly did the British Empire look like in 1800? How did it function, and what were its strengths and weaknesses at that moment in time? Today, we journey back over 2 centuries to explore the British Empire in 1800, a complex web of colonies, trade, war, and politics that laid the foundation for a global superpower. Hello, and warm greetings to you. Thank you for joining this fascinating exploration of history. The story of the British Empire is full of ambition, adventure, and conflict, and 1800 stands as a pivotal year in that story. By understanding the empire at this moment, we can better grasp how it grew and shaped the modern world. Before we dive in, here is a question to consider. Was the British Empire in 1800 driven more by naval power or by economic ambition? Now, let us begin our journey. At the dawn of the 19th century, the British Isles stood on the cusp of a new era. The landscape was no longer divided into separate kingdoms as it had been for centuries. Instead, a growing political unity was reshaping the region and setting the stage for the rise of a powerful kingdom. More than a century earlier, in 1707, 2 distinct nations, England and Scotland, had joined forces to create Great Britain. This union was not just a matter of geography or politics. It was a fusion of economies, cultures, and ambitions. The merging of these 2 kingdoms created a single entity with expanded resources and a larger population. This political alliance would soon be expanded further. Just after the turn of the century, in 1801, Ireland was formally incorporated, creating the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. This integration was complex, shaped by history, conflict, and negotiation. But it ultimately forged a kingdom with unprecedented reach and influence across the British Isles. This growing political unity brought with it a greater concentration of power and opportunity. The larger population meant more labor, more markets, and more minds to drive innovation and governance. The resources pooled together from these islands provided a solid foundation for economic growth and military strength. Britannia's parliamentary government had developed into a unique institution where merchants, industrialists, and landowners found a voice. Their growing influence shaped policy and legislation, linking the fate of commerce and governance more closely than ever before. This partnership between the economic elite and political leaders proved vital. It allowed for decisions that supported industrial growth, expansion of trade, and the establishment of laws that encouraged entrepreneurship and investment. The Industrial Revolution, beginning in the late 18th century, was transforming Britain. Factories sprung up across the country, powered by new technologies and driven by a workforce that was growing and shifting from rural to urban centers. The parliamentary system provided a framework for this cooperation. The government became a stage where commercial interests could push for policies that fueled empire building. Tariffs, colonial expansion, and naval power were all influenced by this blend of political will and economic ambition. The political unity of the British Isles was not without its tensions and challenges. Differences in culture, religion, and economic priorities occasionally surfaced. Ireland, in particular, faced struggles related to representation, governance, and identity within the larger union. Despite these complexities, the union brought undeniable strength. It allowed Britain to stand as a more formidable power on the global stage. The combined resources of the islands under one government created an empire capable of exerting influence far beyond its shores. This era laid the groundwork for the British Empire's expansion throughout the 19th century. The unity at home enabled ambitions abroad. Britannia's ships sailed further, its industries produced more, and its ideas spread wider than ever before. The story of the British Isles in 1800 is one of transformation, a merging of histories and futures into a single political entity. It is a tale of how cooperation between diverse peoples and interests can create something greater than the sum of its parts. As the century unfolded, this unity would be tested and reshaped, but the foundation laid at this time remained crucial. The Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland would become a central player in the global story, driven by the partnership of commerce and politics that began to take shape in these early years. This narrative is more than history, it is the beginning of a journey. A journey that would influence the course of nations, the fate of continents, and the lives of millions. It is a story of ambition, unity, and the forging of a modern state ready to leave its mark on the world. In the year 1800, the strength of the British Empire rested heavily upon the might of its navy. This was a force unlike any other on the seas, a fleet built over decades with precision and power. By the late 18th century, Britain had established itself as the dominant maritime power, commanding oceans and shaping the fate of nations. The Royal Navy was more than just a collection of ships. Its warships sailed vast distances, protecting merchant vessels laden with goods from distant colonies. These trade routes were the arteries through which wealth flowed back to Britain, fueling its economic growth and expanding its influence. Throughout history, the Royal Navy played a decisive role in major conflicts. It secured British interests during the 7 Years' War, a struggle that spanned continents and seas, marking Britannia's rise as a global power. The Navia's victories on the water crippled rival fleets and secured crucial victories on land. Even during the American War of Independence, when Britain lost its 13 American colonies by 1783, the Royal Navy's reach remained formidable. Though one part of the empire was lost, many other territories across the Caribbean, Africa, and the Pacific still fell under British control. The Navy ensured that these distant lands remained connected to the heart of the empire. Control of the seas meant more than just military dominance. It meant control of trade and commerce. The ability to move goods, troops, and resources efficiently gave Britain an edge unmatched by any rival. Naval supremacy ensured that Britain could protect its colonies, enforce trade agreements, and project power worldwide. The ships themselves were marvels of their time. Crafted from sturdy timber, armed with rows of cannons, and manned by skilled sailors. These vessels embodied strength and endurance. Life aboard a ship was harsh and demanding. Yet the crews were disciplined and loyal, driven by a sense of duty and the promise of adventure. Britain's naval ports buzzed with activity, serving as hubs of shipbuilding, repair, and supply. Dockyards like Portsmouth and Plymouth were centers of innovation and industry, where skilled craftsmen shaped the tools of empire. The constant upkeep of ships and training of sailors was a monumental task that required organization and resources. As the sun rose over the horizon, fleets set sail on missions that could last months or years. These voyages crossed treacherous waters, from the stormy North Atlantic to the calm tropical seas. The Navia's ability to navigate and dominate such diverse environments was a testament to its expertise and resilience. Naval battles were tests of strategy and courage. Commanders had to position their ships for advantage, and maintain morale under pressure. The clash of fleets could decide the fate of nations, turning tides of war with a single decisive engagement. The influence of the Royal Navy extended beyond war. It helped suppress piracy, safeguarded merchant shipping, and supported scientific exploration. Expeditions launched from British ports expanded knowledge of the world's oceans and continents, mapping new territories and charting unknown waters. Throughout the 19th century, Britannia's naval power remained central to its global standing. The Navy protected the Empire's interests during periods of peace and conflict, ensuring that Britannia's influence reached every corner of the globe. It played a vital role in shaping international relations and maintaining the balance of power. The legacy of Britannia's naval dominance is visible even today. Many of the routes once patrolled by wooden warships are now the highways of modern trade and travel. The traditions, discipline, and innovations born from that era continue to influence navies around the world. Reflecting on Britannia's naval history reveals a story of determination and adaptation. It shows how mastery of the seas enabled a small island nation to become a global empire. This story is not just about ships and battles, but about the vision and resilience that forged a maritime power unlike any other. In the vast expanse of history, the Royal Navy stands as a symbol of Britain's ambition and strength. Its ships sailed not only to conquer but also to connect distant lands, linking cultures and economies in a complex web that shaped the modern world. The empire built on naval power is a tale of strategy, innovation, and endurance. It was the foundation upon which an empire thrived and transformed the course of history. The year was 1776, a momentous time when 13 British colonies along the eastern coast of North America declared themselves independent. For decades, these colonies had grown and thrived, connected to Britain by trade, governance, and culture. Yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. Issues of taxation, representation, and governance had stirred unrest among colonists who increasingly sought greater autonomy. The decision to declare independence was the culmination of these growing divisions. What followed was the American Revolutionary War, a struggle that lasted 7 years and stretched across vast distances, both physical and ideological. British forces, seasoned and well-equipped, faced a determined and resourceful opposition. The revolutionaries, fighting for the ideals of freedom and self-determination, gained support from unexpected quarters, including foreign allies. The war tested Britannia's military might and imperial resolve. Battles raged from the dense forests of New England to the southern plantations, from the Atlantic coastline to the rugged frontier. The conflict was fierce and costly, draining resources and morale. By 1783, after years of fighting, Britain acknowledged defeat and formally recognized the independence of the United States. The Treaty of Paris sealed this historic outcome, marking the loss of 13 colonies that had once been seen as a cornerstone of the British Empire. The loss was a profound blow, challenging the empire's image and forcing a moment of deep reflection. The Americas, once a promising and expanding domain, were no longer under British control. The empire was compelled to reconsider its strategy and priorities. Rather than retreat, Britain chose to adapt and evolve. Attention shifted toward other parts of the world, where opportunities for expansion and influence awaited. Asia, with its vast populations and rich resources, became a new focus. Africa's coastlines and interior offered fresh prospects for trade and territorial claims. The Caribbean islands, with their lucrative sugar plantations, remained vital economic assets. This strategic pivot laid the groundwork for the empire's transformation in the following decades. Britannia's global ambitions endured, but with a new direction and renewed determination. The lessons of the American loss influenced colonial policies, diplomacy, and military strategies going forward. The story of the American colonies' loss is more than a tale of defeat. It is a chapter of resilience and change within a vast imperial saga. It reveals the complexities of empire building and the shifting tides of power in a changing world. Through this period, the British Empire continued to shape global history, learning from setbacks and seizing new possibilities across continents. The legacy of this pivotal moment echoes in the modern world, reminding us of the fragile balance between control and independence, ambition and adaptation. By the dawn of the 18th century, a company born from trade had transformed into a formidable power, shaping the fate of an entire continent. Its initial voyages brought back precious spices and vibrant textiles, exotic goods that captivated European markets. Yet, trade was only the beginning. Over time, the company's ambitions grew. It was not content to merely exchange goods, it sought influence, control, and power. The vast lands of India, with their wealth and diversity, became the company's ultimate prize. The decisive moment came in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey. In a clash that altered history, the East India Company's forces, led by Robert Clive, defeated the Nawab of Bengal. This victory was more than a military triumph, it was a gateway to political dominance. With Bengal under its control, the company gained the right to collect taxes and govern, blurring the lines between commerce and sovereignty. By 1800, the East India Company had expanded far beyond a trading enterprise. It ruled vast territories across India, its authority backed by armies and administrative systems. The company collected revenues that funded its operations and maintained its military strength. It shaped local politics, influencing rulers and alliances to secure its interests. India, in this era, was often called the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. The wealth generated from its land and people fueled Britannia's growing power on the world stage. The East India Company became the linchpin of this empire, a private organization wielding the power of a state. The Company's rise was marked by a complex web of diplomacy and force. It negotiated treaties with local rulers, sometimes peaceful, sometimes coercive. Its soldiers, both British and Indian, enforced its will across diverse and often resistant regions. The cultural and political landscape of India was reshaped under its influence. Trade continued to thrive alongside governance. Textiles, spices, tea, and other goods flowed from Indian ports to Britain and beyond. The Company's ships sailed the oceans, connecting continents in a network of commerce and control. Yet, this power was not without challenges. Managing such vast and diverse territories required constant vigilance. Local resistance, rival European powers, and the complexities of governing millions demanded adaptability and resolve. The East India Company's story is one of ambition and transformation. It grew from humble beginnings into an empire within an empire, a force that changed the course of history for both Britain and India. A force that changed the course of history for both Britain and India. This era laid the foundations for the modern world, setting the stage for future conflicts and exchanges that would continue to shape global relations. The East India Company's rise was a tale of commerce turned empire, a chapter where the lines between trade, politics, and power blurred forever. In the year 1800, the Caribbean islands stood as vital pillars of the British economy. These islands were not simply distant outposts, they were centers of immense wealth and strategic importance, shaping the fortunes of the empire in profound ways. The foundation of this wealth lay in the sugar plantations that stretched across islands like Jamaica, Barbados, and Antigua. Here, vast fields of sugarcane swayed under the tropical sun, their golden stalks destined for markets far beyond the shores of the Caribbean. The production of sugar was a complex and demanding process, turning raw cane into one of the most sought-after commodities in the world. Yet, behind the sweetness of sugar lay a harsh and brutal reality. The labor that sustained these plantations came from enslaved Africans, brought across the Atlantic in chains. They worked under unforgiving conditions, their lives marked by hardship and endurance. The plantations were places of relentless toil, where human suffering was the unseen cost of immense profit. These islands were not isolated. Their ports buzzed with ships carrying barrels of sugar, rum, and other goods bound for Britain and European markets. The wealth generated here fed into the broader British economy, funding industries, trade, and the expansion of the empire itself. But the British colonial presence in this region was not limited to the Caribbean islands alone. The empire's reach extended into the vast Atlantic Ocean, encompassing other territories that played distinct roles in its maritime network. Bermuda, a small cluster of islands in the North Atlantic, served as a crucial naval and trading outpost. Its strategic location allowed Britain to project power across the Atlantic, safeguarding shipping routes and offering a base for naval operations. Bermuda's role, though less visible than the Sugar Islands, was essential for maintaining British dominance on the seas. Further north, the colonies of Canada were slowly growing. Nova Scotia and Newfoundland were prominent parts of this expanding territory. The landscape here was starkly different from the tropical warmth of the Caribbean. Rugged coastlines, dense forests, and cold winters defined these lands, where communities were still small and population sparse. Canada's development was gradual but steady. Fishing, fur trading, and timber industries formed the backbone of its economy, with settlers and indigenous peoples interacting in complex ways. The region's vast wilderness offered opportunities and challenges, shaping a frontier spirit among its inhabitants. The region's vast wilderness offered opportunities and challenges, shaping a frontier spirit among its inhabitants. Though these Atlantic colonies lacked the immediate wealth of the sugar plantations, they held strategic and economic importance for Britain. They provided resources, naval bases, and gateways to the interior of the North American continent. Their presence contributed to the empire's ability to control trade and defend its interests across vast distances. Together, the Caribbean and Atlantic colonies formed an interconnected network within the British Empire. Each territory played its part, whether through the immense profits of sugar, the strategic value of naval bases, or the promise of untapped resources and expanding settlements. This colonial system was a complex tapestry of commerce, power, and human experience. It reflected the ambitions of an empire reaching across oceans and the realities of life in far-flung lands. The story of these colonies is one of contrasts, of prosperity born from hardship, of distant islands connected by trade and governance, and of the evolving relationship between Britain and the peoples who lived under its rule. As the 19th century progressed, these colonies would continue to change. Economic shifts, social movements, and political developments would challenge old systems and lay the groundwork for new futures. The British Isles looked across the Atlantic to these territories with a mixture of pride and pragmatic interest, aware that their strength was tied to the fortunes of these lands and the people within them. This narrative of the Caribbean and Atlantic colonies is a chapter in the broader story of Empire, a story of ambition, exploitation, resilience, and transformation that would leave lasting impressions on history and shape the modern world. In the year 1800, the British Empire stood at the heart of a vast and intricate trading network that spanned the globe. This network connected continents, oceans, and cultures, weaving together an economy unlike any before it. At its core were goods that moved relentlessly across the Atlantic, fueling industries and shaping societies on multiple continents. Among the most sought-after commodities were sugar, tobacco, cotton, and rum. These products, grown and produced in colonies across the Americas and the Caribbean, were transported to European markets where they found eager consumers. The sweet taste of sugar transformed diets, tobacco became a widespread indulgence, and cotton fed the rapidly growing textile mills of Britain. Rum, distilled from sugarcane, was both a popular drink and a currency in this sprawling economic web. This movement of goods was not random but followed a distinct pattern known as the triangular trade. Ships sailed from Europe to Africa, where manufactured goods were exchanged for enslaved people. These men, women, and children were forcibly transported across the Atlantic in harrowing voyages to the Americas. Once there, they were sold into slavery and forced to labor on plantations that produced the very goods sent back to Europe. The triangular trade was a grim reality underpinning much of the Atlantic economy. It was responsible for the movement of millions of enslaved individuals, whose suffering and resilience left a lasting mark on history. The trade connected continents in a cycle of commerce and exploitation, shaping economies and societies in profound ways. Britain's participation in this system was central to its economic expansion. The wealth generated by these exchanges provided capital for investment in industry and infrastructure at home. Factories powered by steam engines turned raw cotton into finished cloth, while ports bustled with goods waiting to be shipped around the world. The prosperity built on trade underpinned the country's rise as an industrial powerhouse. Yet, this economic engine was complex and multifaceted. Alongside goods and money, ideas, cultures, and people moved between continents. Ports like Liverpool and Bristol became melting pots of influences, where traders, sailors, and settlers met. The Atlantic world was not just a zone of commerce but a space where diverse experiences and identities intersected. The legacy of this trade network is visible in many aspects of modern life. Economies, languages, and cultures across the Atlantic basin bear traces of these centuries-old connections. The goods that once fueled empire now serve as reminders of a world shaped by both opportunity and hardship. At sea, merchant ships faced challenges from unpredictable weather to piracy. Navigating vast oceans required skill and courage, and the flow of goods depended on these perilous journeys. The success of the Atlantic economy was tied to control of the seas, ensuring safe passage for trade and maintaining connections between distant lands. In the Americas, plantations transformed landscapes and societies. The labor of enslaved people produced immense wealth but came at an immense human cost. These communities, shaped by resilience and resistance, contributed to the cultural mosaic of the Atlantic world. In Europe, the influx of goods and wealth drove social and economic change. Cities grew, industries expanded, and new classes emerged. The demands of global trade spurred technological innovation and financial development, laying the groundwork for modern capitalism. The triangular trade and Atlantic economy were more than historical phenomena. They were forces that reshaped the world. They created patterns of wealth and inequality, connection and division, that continue to influence societies today. Understanding this history is essential to grasping the complexity of our interconnected world. It reveals how commerce, culture, and human experience are intertwined across continents and centuries. The story of trade and the Atlantic economy is one of movement and exchange, of ambition and adversity. It speaks to the power of connection and the consequences of exploitation. As we reflect on this past, we gain insight into the forces that built the modern world, and the ongoing impact of those global ties. This narrative invites us to explore the depths of history, to recognize the echoes of trade and transformation that still resonate across oceans and borders. In the currents of the Atlantic, the story of empire, economy, and human endurance flows endlessly, shaping the present and future in ways both visible and unseen. By the close of the 18th century, the vast continent of Australia was emerging from the shadows of the unknown, stepping onto the stage of British imperial ambition. Though only recently colonized in 1788, Australia was beginning its journey as a British colony, a place marked by promise and challenge alike. The story of Australia's colonization began with a practical purpose. Britain faced overcrowded prisons at home, and the distant land across the seas offered a solution. Australia was established as a penal colony, a remote outpost to house convicts transported from Britain. The arrival of the First Fleet in 1788 marked the birth of a new chapter in imperial history. Yet, Australia was more than just a place of exile. Its vast, untamed landscapes beckoned explorers, settlers, and adventurers. The promise of fertile lands, natural resources, and opportunity inspired a slow but steady expansion beyond the initial settlements. The colonial authorities sought to build communities, establish farms, and create a new society at the edge of the known world. Life in these early years was harsh and uncertain. The convicts and settlers faced unfamiliar climates, difficult terrain, and the challenge of establishing basic infrastructure. Relations with the indigenous peoples were complex and often fraught with tension, as two very different worlds collided in this distant land. Meanwhile, across the vast Pacific Ocean, British influence extended in quieter but strategically significant ways. The empire held a scattering of islands and ports that served as vital waypoints for ships involved in whaling, trade, and naval operations. These possessions, though limited in size, were crucial to maintaining Britannia's reach across the Pacific. Whaling was a booming industry in the late 18th century, and the Pacific offered rich hunting grounds. Islands with sheltered harbors became important stops for ships to resupply and repair. These outposts connected the empire's far-flung interests, supporting commerce and maritime dominance. Britannia's presence in the Pacific was a careful balance of commerce and control. The islands served not only economic purposes but also strategic ones, allowing the empire to monitor sea routes and project power in an oceanic realm that was increasingly important to global trade. As the years passed, Australia's role within the empire grew. The colony expanded its boundaries, with settlers moving inland and along the coastline. New towns and ports emerged, weaving a network of communities across the continent. The resources of Australia began to attract attention. Timber, minerals, and fertile soil offered potential wealth for the empire. Agriculture developed, supporting a growing population and increasing trade with Britain and other parts of the world. The journey of Australia and the Pacific in these early years was one of transformation. From a distant penal colony to a land of opportunity and expansion. Australia was slowly taking shape within the vast mosaic of the British Empire. The story of this expansion is one of endurance and adaptation. A testament to the challenges of forging new lives in unfamiliar territories. It reflects the broader dynamics of Empire A, the interplay of ambition, resourcefulness, and the search for influence across the globe. As the 19th century unfolded, Australia and the Pacific would continue to play an increasingly important role in the imperial story. Their growth and development marked a new phase in the reach and complexity of British power. This narrative is a reminder of how far the empire stretched, and how diverse its interests had become. It speaks to the vastness of the world that Britain sought to shape, and the enduring legacy of those early colonial endeavors on distant shores. British expansion across the globe brought with it encounters with indigenous peoples whose lives and lands were forever changed. These interactions were complex, often marked by cooperation, conflict, and profound challenges. Local rulers sometimes chose to cooperate, seeing advantage in alliances with the newcomers. These partnerships could bring stability and new opportunities, yet beneath the surface, resistance simmered. Many communities and leaders resisted the loss of sovereignty and the intrusion of foreign rule. Battles, negotiations, and shifting loyalties painted a complicated picture of coexistence and conflict. The Caribbean told a different story. By the time British settlers arrived, the indigenous populations had been devastated by disease, displacement, and earlier European colonization. In their place, African slaves were brought in vast numbers to work on plantations. The forced migration and brutal labor systems created a new social order, rooted in exploitation and suffering. The echoes of these painful histories still resonate across the region today. In Australia, the story took on another tragic dimension. The Aboriginal peoples had lived on the continent for tens of thousands of years, their cultures deeply connected to the land. As British colonists arrived and spread across the territory, displacement and violence followed. The arrival of settlers disrupted ancient ways of life, leading to loss of land, culture, and life. The struggle for recognition and justice for Aboriginal peoples has continued into the present day. Relations with indigenous peoples during British expansion were never simple. They were shaped by cultural misunderstandings, economic interests, and power imbalances. The consequences were often tragic, marked by loss and resilience in equal measure. These stories remind us of the human cost of empire. They invite reflection on the ways in which history is woven from many voices, and how those voices continue to shape our world. The complexities of these encounters are a crucial part of understanding the past and its impact on the present. Through cooperation and conflict, through hardship and survival. The interactions between British colonists and indigenous peoples form a powerful chapter in the story of global history. They reveal the tensions between progress and preservation, between conquest and coexistence, that defined an era and continue to resonate today. At the dawn of the 19th century, Britannia's economy stood on the brink of profound change. The foundations of a new industrial age were being laid, promising to reshape society, commerce, and the very fabric of daily life. This transformation would come to be known as the Industrial Revolution, a period marked by innovation, ambition, and rapid growth. Central to this revolution was the textile industry. Long established as a cornerstone of British manufacturing, textiles were now at the forefront of technological advancement. The introduction of machines like the spinning jenny revolutionized how thread was produced, dramatically increasing speed and efficiency. What once took countless hours by hand could now be accomplished in a fraction of the time. Complementing these innovations was the steam engine, a powerful force that changed the scale and scope of production. Steam power freed factories from the limits of water sources and manual labor, enabling machinery to operate with greater strength and consistency. This new energy source fueled the growth of mills and workshops across the country, turning towns into centers of manufacturing. As industrial output expanded, so too did the demand for raw materials. Cotton, wool, and other fibers were needed in ever greater quantities. The empire's vast network of colonies provided much of these essential resources. From the plantations in the Caribbean to the cotton fields of India, colonies supplied the raw materials necessary to keep the wheels of industry turning. At the same time, colonies offered growing markets for Britannia's manufactured goods. Finished textiles, tools, and machinery found eager buyers far from the industrial towns where they were made. This reciprocal relationship between production and consumption became a driving force in Britannia's economic expansion. The industrial growth also spurred advancements in transportation. Canals and roads were improved to carry goods faster and more efficiently. Soon, railways would emerge as a revolutionary means of connecting factories, ports, and markets, shrinking distances and accelerating commerce. This period was not without its challenges. The rapid pace of change brought social upheaval, as people moved from rural areas to burgeoning cities in search of work. Factory life was demanding and often harsh, with long hours and difficult conditions. Yet, the promise of opportunity drew millions to the new industrial centers. Government and business interests began to align more closely. Policies were crafted to encourage investment and protect trade. This partnership between industry and state laid the groundwork for Britannia's dominance in global markets. Economic growth fueled innovation beyond textiles as well. Iron and coal industries expanded to support machinery and energy needs. New inventions and processes spread across sectors, increasing productivity and efficiency. As Britannia's industrial might grew, so did its influence on the world stage. The ability to produce goods on a mass scale and to transport them efficiently gave Britain a competitive edge in international trade. This advantage helped to expand the empire and strengthen economic ties with distant colonies. The Industrial Revolution was more than a series of inventions, it was a profound shift in how societies functioned. It reshaped class structures, urban landscapes, and the rhythms of daily life. It fostered a sense of progress and possibility that would define the century ahead. Looking back, the economic and industrial growth of this era was a turning point. It transformed Britain from a primarily agrarian society into the world's workshop. The innovations and expansions of this time laid the foundation for modern industry and commerce. This story is one of ingenuity and ambition, of people harnessing new technologies to reshape their world. It is a tale of economic transformation that would echo across continents, changing lives and forging a future defined by industry and trade. The journey of Britain's economy at the turn of the 19th century is a chapter in history where the seeds of modern industry were sown, and the stage was set for an era of unprecedented growth and change. By the year 1800, the British Empire was poised on the edge of transformation. It had not yet become the largest empire in the world. But the seeds of immense potential had been firmly planted. The empire faced a complex landscape filled with both formidable challenges and promising opportunities. One of the greatest difficulties was managing territories scattered across the globe. Communication and control were hindered by vast distances and varied environments. From the Caribbean islands to the Indian subcontinent, each colony presented unique obstacles. Local populations often resisted foreign rule, asserting their own identities and aspirations. These tensions demanded careful navigation, requiring a blend of military strength, diplomacy, and administrative skill. European rivals added another layer of complexity. France and Spain, two powerful empires, contested Britannia's ambitions at sea and on land. Battles for influence unfolded in far-flung regions, shaping the fate of continents. The struggle for dominance was relentless, and Britannia's ability to defend and expand its holdings depended on overcoming this fierce competition. Britannia's advantages were significant. Its naval power was unmatched, granting control over vital trade routes and enabling rapid movement of troops and resources. The Royal Navy acted as a shield and a sword, protecting the Empire's interests and projecting influence across the oceans. Commerce flourished under this protection. Trade networks linked distant ports, bringing wealth and materials that fueled growth. Merchants, sailors, and financiers played crucial roles in sustaining the Empire's economic engine. The flow of goods such as textiles, spices, and raw materials was both a cause and a consequence of British expansion. Industrial innovation added further strength to this foundation. The rise of factories and mechanized production transformed the economy. Britannia's growing industrial base supplied the empire with manufactured goods, tools, and weapons, reinforcing its global position. Technological advances boosted efficiency and productivity, providing the means to support expanding territories. The Empire's governance structures evolved to meet these demands. Colonial administrations became more organized, incorporating new policies to balance control with local conditions. While often driven by imperial interests, these systems laid the groundwork for more complex political arrangements in the future. The coming decades would witness a dramatic expansion of British influence. Territories were acquired, secured, and integrated into the imperial framework. New frontiers in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific came under British control, extending the reach of the empire to unprecedented levels. This period set the stage for Britannia's peak in the 19th century, a time when it became known as the empire on which the sun never set. Its power and prestige shaped global politics, economy, and culture, leaving a legacy that endures today. Yet, the journey was never simple or assured. Each opportunity carried risks and required careful strategy. The empire had to adapt continually to changing circumstances, both at home and abroad. Success depended on resilience, innovation, and a willingness to confront uncertainty. Looking back, the story of the British Empire at this pivotal moment reveals a balance of ambition and caution. It shows how a nation, faced with immense challenges, leveraged its strengths to build a global presence. This narrative invites reflection on the nature of power and expansion. It highlights the complexities of empire building and the interplay of forces that drive history forward. As the British Empire moved into the 19th century, it carried with it lessons from the past and hopes for the future. The challenges and opportunities ahead shaped not only the fate of the empire, but also the course of the modern world. Through this lens, we see how ambition, competition, and innovation combined to create one of Historia's most influential powers. The story is a testament to the enduring impact of vision and determination on the global stage. The Empire's journey was marked by tension and possibility, struggle and achievement. This is a story of challenge met with opportunity, of a world in flux and an empire rising to meet it. In the unfolding chapters of Empire, Britannia's experience stands as a compelling example of how a nation navigates the uncertain waters of growth and change. This is a story of challenge met with opportunity, of a world in flux and an empire rising to meet it. Of a world in flux and an empire rising to meet it. Of a world in flux and an empire rising to meet it. Thank you for joining this journey into the British Empire as it stood in 1800. Understanding this moment helps us see how a small island nation began shaping the modern world. The story of empire is full of ambition, struggle, and complexity, and it continues to influence our lives today. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep exploring history's incredible stories.